That's what, 1:30 go Ulster time? 12:30 go Ulster time?
But,
See? And we waited. More people. Oh, we just finished. I guess we can recap. Just joking. Hey.
you're like right on time for us to about to start, so you could.
Oh, good.
You were just being so
We're
quick.
just waiting for you.
Yeah.
I'll put next time we just be here at 1:10.
We should either say it starts at 12:45.
Right.
Yeah.
So people will be here by 10 after.
It's a long-standing joke amongst real estate agents, but really we should do that.
Well, it's also amongst Mexicans. I'm Mexican and we're like, tell us an hour before the time, otherwise we're not gonna.
I was-
Mormons, so it's really.
Oh, really? Everybody, let's just say
Literally
everybody.
I was married to a Hawaiian for 19 years and
They're the same.
it's
It's
ish.
just
It's
humans then,
10-ish.
right?
Mormons call it Mormon Standard Time.
But we call it Mexican time, so.
It's called Hawaiian time.
See,
I'm
so
always-
we just
I'm
changed.
always like, but isn't Hawaii 3 hours ahead? So like, shouldn't you be 3 hours early?
Right.
Or right on time? Because that allows you to technically be 3 hours late.
Not 6 hours though.
Girl, just catch. I want a couch like this. I don't get much girl. At least this color of like leather.
Yeah, it's dry right? So
I've been making my cold calls. No one has yelled at me yet. People have been bitchy. I know. That's what I say.
Just
I'm like,
don't call
hey,
me.
I know you love me.
Just
Let me sell you your house. Let me sell you. Or let me sell you.
Let me sell you.
Let me sell you.
Let me be your pimp.
How many calls have we made? What? That's all this is.
We don't have the right licenses and insurance.
This is not a brothel.
Dude, it's fine. What do you think I was doing in Europe past 3 months?
all right, we'll get started.
Preliminary work. You were doing preliminary work.
You just tell me.
Officially, you were doing.
They don't know.
Oh, anybody else walk in? So it's good. All right, cool. All right, listing presentations. Who here is like the ultimate listing presentation presenter?
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, well, apparently everybody else in the brokerage is. So we should really see a lot of listings coming in now. Reminding everybody. Okay. No, you know, listing presentation is kind of a funny thing because everybody has their own style, right? People like Keith and I, when somebody's like, "Oh, what do you do for listing presentations?" It's like I go to the house, have a beer, and like hang out because like by the time Keith and I go to the listing presentation, like it's not whether or not we're going to list it. It's just like
Right.
but that's not always the case. You know, that obviously is with certain types of clients. Every once in a while, we
So
still have
often, I've been one. I'm probably going to need this.
yeah, every once in a while, we still have to take paper with us, you know, and our computer and things like that. But over the last couple of years, like listing presentations have drastically changed where we kind of just go and it's like we can give them all the comps in the world, but you know, they're already telling us what their neighbor's house sold for. And that's never really changed. It's always been that way. But now it's like, well, this neighbor and this neighbor and this neighbor and Zillow said this. And my friend that's a real estate agent said this. And so even if it's overpriced, like we're going to list it this, whether you agree with me or not, and they've gotten it. Like surprisingly enough, like they've gotten whatever they listed their house for. Obviously with the market changing, that's not happening. But the problem is that sellers are still acting like that. They're still saying, well, my neighbor this and my friend said this, and it's just not how it is. So we had to kind of have to backpedal a little bit, go back into actual listing presentations and doing more work again, right? So obviously that's the purpose of this class, trying to get back into kind of the old habits of treating this like a business and having it be, it doesn't matter if you're meeting with a friend who you know you've already kind of got the listing, but actually like treating it like a business where every single client you're giving the same kind of presentation to. Maybe the services might change house to house or whatever, but you're able to present it the exact same way every time. So, so it's more than just a meeting, right? You've got your pre-meeting, initial conversation. So the person contacts you and says, hey, we're thinking about selling our house, or hey, I'd like to know what my house is worth, right? You have that very first communication with them. Then you say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and answer whatever question it was that you originally got with me for. And you do the in-person meeting where you actually go see the house, right? You think of how you're gonna market it, which is obviously changing because we're not just shoving things on our MLS. You're valuing the property, as well as this is gonna be your own value that you're offering to them. And then that, with the value that you're offering them comes your knowledge, right? What do you actually bring to them as their real estate agent? So let's start with that pre-meeting, initial contact, right? So they call you up. The purpose of the pre-meeting is information gathering and rapport building, right? So they've contacted you, but this isn't actually, the pre-meeting doesn't really have anything to do with them. This is they've contacted you, and what do you do in the time that they've contacted you versus the first time you actually go meet them in person to see the house or whatever, right? So that's what the pre-meeting is going to be. So learn anything you can about their situation via social media or any other source available, right? So this is like you're stalking them. You know they want to sell. You know they've at least got the idea in their head from either their own situation or from somewhere, right? And maybe that initial contact, they told you one of these things. Oh, we had a person die in the house when we came home from vacation. There was a body on the floor, and now we want to sell, right? Or it was mom and dad's house. They just passed away and moved into a home, whatever it might be, right? There's all sorts of questions here. And so depending on what they told you in that initial contact, it's now a great opportunity for you to find out as much as you can, a little bit more, kind of just some investigative work. Learn anything you can about their lifestyles, especially if this is somebody that you don't really know, somebody who maybe just contacted you out of the blue, or maybe it's somebody who is your brother's cousin's uncle's dog's owner or something, right? And so, uncle dogs, that would still be your uncle, by the way. It's your uncle's dogs. But you want to learn as much as you can about their lifestyle, their hobbies, their interests, things like that, right? And this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the actual sale of their house or why they're selling it necessarily, right? But what this is doing is this is preloading how that actual in-person meeting is going to go, right? If you can find some of the same hobbies and interests that you share, it's going to provide you icebreakers, things like that to talk about when you're actually meeting with them for the first time. And prepare a CMA. Now, when I say prepare a CMA, that doesn't mean like go through and print out 70 pages of like every single thing and then be like, look where your house is worth, right? This is, you're going to take their address. You're going to take kind of a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, they never finished the basement. The house needs to be remodeled. Worst case scenario, this is kind of your price point. You have your best case scenario, like house is immaculate, looks brand new. They finished the basement, they've got the theater, they're leaving a Lamborghini in the garage. Like, this is what it's worth, right? So you're kind of just getting the numbers in your head. Not only that, but you're practicing
to see what has actually sold in their neighborhood, right? And yes,
So like, I've always planned on having like a slideshow when I take for, I haven't done that, but it's been around. And so when you're like preparing CMAs and you want to show them like this house sold for this, it looks like this, you are allowed to show them what it sold for?
Mhm.
Okay, because I thought we were like non-disclosure, so I'm not sure where.
we're
that-
non-disclosure state by not.
Without
what's the word?
necessity.
We are non-disclosure state, meaning we don't have to, but we can if we choose to.
The difference being like publicly disclosing a sold price for a property that you don't have the right to disclose a sold price to public. It's their home, that's sort of, so it's
Okay.
a little bit of difference.
But
Yeah.
it's like.
If the
I think
bank,
it's
if,
so
Private
Yeah.
conversation versus public.
Yeah.
And that's,
If-
you can't publicly disclose
Yeah.
it because you don't.
and nor do you have to, like, if the state calls you up and say, hey, we're working on property taxes in your neighborhood. And we notice that you just bought your house. What did you buy it for? You don't have to disclose. Even if it's the state calling, you don't have to disclose it.
Okay. So the
Because,
difference is like public use and then private use.
yeah, we're a non-disclosure state, but we don't have to disclose to anybody. So, but yeah, so prepare your CMA. Right, so this is just kind of, again, pre-meeting stuff. It's not working also. There we go. So then you have the meeting. You're actually gonna go meet with them. You've kind of prepared yourself. You've done your stalking. Learn as much as you can without actually like asking them, right? And the thing about the stuff you found out is you're gonna kind of keep it in your pocket. You're not gonna like knock on the door and be like, so grandma died and you're trying to cash out and
Congratulations.
yeah, like a lot of it, unless they've told you, you're gonna kind of just keep that in your pocket, right? There are hobbies and interests. You don't necessarily want to like introduce yourself and be like, oh, so I saw that you take pictures and that you hike and you do this because they're like, hey, you freaking stalked me, right? You don't want to. First impression's everything. You're gonna keep that stuff. So when you're like walking through a house and you all of a sudden notice all this photography, you're like, yeah, they really do photography. I do photography. Then you can talk to them about it, right? You can ask them about it. But yeah, so the meeting is what comes up next, right? So you're meeting at the property. One of the first things I like to do when I meet at a property is I take the tour, right? Now, taking the tour is literally just, hey, well, like, okay, I'm here. Like, first thing, show me around the house. Show me around the yard. Show me everything that is home, right? And this is a great time to ask questions. When I say ask questions, it's not necessarily asking questions about, well, so why are you moving? Why, how much do you think your house is worth? It's not those type of questions. It's more personal questions. You're walking around the house and you're like, oh, so I see like you have this style. Ask questions about, the furniture, or ask questions about pictures of places on the wall or whatever it might be, right? And that quickly moves into like story time for them. When you start asking those questions about stuff you're seeing, it creates this story time opportunity where all of a sudden you're showing interest in them as people, and they start opening up to you and sharing, oh yeah, that particular picture, like we were down in Lake Powell and the houseboat sunk, and becomes this great thing. And then obviously opens up a time for you to just like feed them compliments and stuff about maybe the style of their house, or maybe they do photography, like I said. You can compliment them on stuff like that, or just how clean the house is, or how you like the layout of the house, or whatever it might be, right? So that's kind of you're taking the tour. So after you taking the tour, you have to sit down, right? Always find a very comfortable place. Let them kind of lead that, because their natural instinct is to go somewhere comfortable in their house. It may just be leaning against the counter. It may be in a formal living room, whatever it might be. Let them kind of lead that and make sure you're sitting somewhere comfortable, right? They like try to take you to the bathroom and have to sit down. You're like, that's probably not the place. Unless that's like the most comforting places. They make all their decisions on the toilet, whatever. Kind of recite what you learned on the tour. This is the kind of time like, I love that you showed me, your pictures of sinking the houseboat in Powell. I love that, we talked a little bit about like your decor or whatever, right? All you're doing here is with reciting that, you're letting them know that you heard them. That you weren't just walking around the house counting dollars as you were walking through, oh man, yeah, this place is gonna sell for a lot. It's gonna be easy. You know, so you're reciting it to them, just letting them know that you heard them. Which is, again, a lot of this is just building up rapport. This is where the CMA comes in, presenting the live CMA. Does everybody know what a live CMA is? This is the greatest thing about technology these days, right? So when I do a CMA for a client, I quit printing them out a long time ago. The reason is because every time I print it out, there'd be the neighbor's house that sold, like I talked about earlier. And it's like, I don't remember seeing that house at all. Like, you're sure it was this one? They're like, yeah, it was that one. I've got, there's the agent that did it. And all of a sudden you're just like, I feel like an idiot. I don't remember seeing that one. Is it that different? Did I narrow it down? Whatever, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, theirs is less square footage. It's always less square footage.
Always not as nice.
Yeah, it's never as nice. Smaller yard. It's never as good as their house.
Mass murder occurred
Yeah,
there.
which is really
70
funny because
years ago.
and then when they say that, you're always like, well, if it really is less than, I should have seen this when I did my CMA, but I'm going through my 10 pages here. And as I'm going through these 10 pages, I print it out, like, that house is not here. And you're stuck because you're like laptops in the car or at home, because you're bringing it, you printed it out. That's where live CMA comes in. Now, for me, when I do a live CMA, this is actually how I do regular CMAs too. Like, this is like my starting point. I'll literally go in, do an address search, first find their address, right? See if it's ever been listed before. So you can pull an old MLS number. Can't find that, I just do the tax record search. Either way, I find whatever information I can so that what I can do is go into the quick search, go into map search, and jump to the old MLS number or jump to their address.
So you pre-cut it up before?
No, I know it's right in front of them.
Okay.
But because I did my CMA in the pre portion, I know exactly how I'm gonna find it, so I'm not fumbling around in front of them. Yeah, I already have the old MLS number or the tax ID or whatever it is I need to do that, right? And the only reason I know if they don't have an old MLS, the only reason I would want to pull it up, because I could technically just pull it up with their address in front of them, right? But the only reason I don't is because I want to pull up the tax ID because I want to know the square footage. I want to know some of the details of the house that I wouldn't necessarily be able to pull from an old MLS because maybe it wasn't listed before, right? So I just want to have those things in my head so that I can use it. So I do it right in front of them. I do a map search and I do the jump to, which is a little curvy arrow, jump to their property. And then I don't do like a mile out. I literally will like square their neighborhood, just their neighborhood, and I'll see what comes up first. If you're lucky enough, like 4 or 5 homes will come up, and it's every single house that's sold in the neighborhood. That's literally, I haven't narrowed down any of the criteria, not even if it's single family home or not, right? I want to see everything that's sold in their neighborhood. If it's a neighborhood where it's definitely like all single family homes, there's not a whole lot you have to narrow down as far as I don't have to narrow down single family home, right? The reason I want to do this is because right in front of them, I can see the highest thing ever sold in their neighborhood in the last 180 days. I can see the lowest thing sold. I can see everything that's active. I can see everything that's under contract. I can see anything backup status, right? So when they say, oh, my neighbor's house, I can look and say, well, here's the list of everything that's sold. Which one's your neighbor's house? Oh, it's not there. Oh, they sold it like a year and a half ago? Yeah, well, we can't use that as a comp, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when they say their neighbor's house, it's either a lot bigger and a lot different than theirs, or their timeline is so wrong. It's like, okay, that was last summer. This is now,
Their neighbor lied about how much they sold their house for.
Yeah. which is a huge one.
Here it is. Here's the sold price.
They're like, oh, yeah, they listed it at 510, but yeah, they sold it for 420. But the neighbor's like, yeah, we sold 515. That's how it always goes, right? But so I do the live CMA in front of them, and obviously you can always go out to your 1 mile radius right in front of them, you know, because you've already practiced this during your pre-meeting, right? So you already know like how to actually narrow down the comps you would use because you've done it. But now what you're doing is what I do in front of them again, show them everything, and then start narrowing down to the houses that are more like theirs that I'm actually going to use as comps. Again, I only do that in front of them simply because it helps to fight any sort of them coming back and saying, no, this house, no, that house, right? Because they've now seen everything that's sold in the neighborhood. If they're like, no, I wanted to list it for this much, you can be like, there hasn't been a house in your neighborhood ever sell for that much. That's fine that you want to list that much for that much, but we have to figure out how and why, right? So that's why I do the live CMA now. I don't take the paper ones. Again, you can have the paper ones if you've done your CMA, have the paper ones so you have something to kind of reflect back on for the comps you use if you don't remember, right? It takes a lot of practice. But I wouldn't just present those to them. You can present those to them and then like do the live CMA and show them how you got to those because a lot of people aren't trusting the real estate agents either. And so they're like, well, you just cherry picked. You just show them the comps that get you to where you think my house is.
So let's make some trust you,
Yeah.
your like opinion on the price.
Exactly. You're showing them exactly how it is that you came to that price. So that's why I like doing live CMA. And then this is where you start to present your marketing plan. What's that? Oh, it's just throwing up the house on the MLS, right? Like that's all we got to do.
Done.
Done.
No mess, no fuss.
And then you're present you versus them. And we're going to go over what all these things are. Marketing. What is that? Can I just put the house on the MLS and hope for the best? Well,
Not anymore.
kind of been able to.
Can you? Yeah.
Should you? All right, so marketing. Now, as we go through some of this stuff, it's not all going to pertain to you. It's not going to pertain to every single house you list, right? The idea is that as a training purpose, maybe you don't know what you should be including in your marketing plan. So we're going to kind of name every single possible thing here. And if you guys have other ideas, throw them out, right? But we're going to kind of go over all the basic ideas of what you should at least be having in mind when you're coming and building your marketing plan. Because again, you want to have kind of a baseline to work with every single time. But certain houses, like let's say Matterport tour, right? Where they do like the 3D walkthrough. I've done houses where that doesn't necessarily work, right? Because it's townhouse and like townhouse is a little bit harder to do if it's like a middle unit because they can't do the whole dollhouse effect, right? And sometimes like same thing happens with like a duplex where it's non-conforming duplex where it doesn't have like where they have to go outside and go back in or something like that. They can't do the dollhouse effect right all the time. Sometimes they can reflect it off of fence or something and they can make it work. But anyways, you guys get the point. Sometimes a drone photo, if it's a house out in West Jordan out in the middle of nowhere and you do a drone photo, what are you really trying to show? Right? Like I did a drone photo with a house that was, we were standing in front of it. It looked like just a nice townhouse out in Camas, right? As soon as you got like 3 feet above the roof line, you all of a sudden realize you are the closest house to Jordanelle that at the time there was. Like you could sit on your back porch and just, your view is the sunset over the sunrise over Jordanelle. You would never know that without the drone photos or actually going to the property, right? Or just fast forwarding 34 pictures and seeing the deck. But there's a purpose for each of these, you know. So not every house can have them. But anyways, your MLS description, we've kind of talked about that in other trainings. Your MLS description, try not to just reiterate what's already on the MLS. This house is 5 bedroom, 3 baths, X amount of square feet.
You get Amanda to write it for you.
You get Amanda to write it for you, or you just copy hers.
Yeah, you just copy.
Just copy.
Copy hers, change-
Everyone else
Change it up
does
a little
that.
bit.
Yeah, change a couple words in there, you know. I like to be fun with mine. Some of you guys have seen mine. I like to tell a story or whatever. There's no wrong way to do it, but this is your first opportunity because agents aren't reading the MLS description. They're reading the agent remarks The MLS description is the part that everybody sees on the public side. So when they go to Zillow or Realtor.com, or even just, the public side, MLS, UtahRealestate.com. The MLS description is the part that the general public is reading. So that besides your pictures, your MLS description is going to be your first impression. And that's why you want it to be attention grabbing. Your signage. Now this is the other part that people in the neighborhood start to see. Well, why do you want your signage to be good? Why does any of that matter? It's just a sign, right? Well, you guys may not see it as much as I see it because I own a sign company. I get the joy of doing all the installs right now, right? But I'll go into a neighborhood and install a sign. And sometimes I'll do like 5 signs to the same agent in the same neighborhood. Well, that's because that agent has built a reputation in that neighborhood, right? And your signage starts to be your brand. It starts to be the way that people recognize you. All of this does, right? The way you write your MLS descriptions, if they're catchy, like people know me for my MLS descriptions. Even agents know me. Like if I have a listing, go read the description because it's probably going to be funny, right? The signage, same thing. People are going to look at you as a professional, or you're going to start building your brand of however your signage is, even down to like what kind of post you use, if that's a very consistent thing, or if like you're just trying to tie it to wherever on the front of the house you can every single time, like that's part of your branding. People will know, oh yeah, like they don't really care about that. They, your photos, using a vendor, you try to use the same vendor every time, find a vendor that works for you. If that vendor doesn't work for you, find a different one. Always have a backup plan. There's a reason why, like, I was taking photos just last week for one of our agents. They had some remodeling done, and all of a sudden, their photographer was like, "Yeah, I can't." And they had no backup plan. So I went in and took some photos, and I'm not going to do that, just so you know. Always professional photos. I don't care how crappy the house is. Professional photos, they're cheap. This is all part of your marketing plan. This is what you're selling people, right? This is your value. Video. A lot of companies now, with the purchase of photos, they'll do a quick walkthrough video tour for you as well, because they're using some of the same photos. All they're doing is using editing software to zoom in, zoom out, pan, things like that. So they're not actually walking through taking a video. They're doing a video with the photos, right? Some companies will do videos. Videos especially work with hiring property, where you're doing more of like a lifestyle video, things like that. Any type of home where you need a little bit more internet presence, video really helps over just photos, because we just got swiping on videos or on photos. And same thing with the tour. So the tour kind of goes with like the 3D tours, whether or not you're actually physically walking through, giving a tour on social media, which is the next topic, right? Tour is just another one of your marketing, because you have to decide whether or not that's going to be something you do with every home as part of your package or not. Social media. Are you just going to like share the MLS on social media? Or are you going to like have a plan where it's like, okay, I'm going to share a full walkthrough video on YouTube every time. I'm going to make a TikTok walking through just kind of highlighting features, like the best parts of the house. Am I going to do a write-up on Facebook about it, or my website blog about it? You have to kind of decide what social media platforms you want to do, right? You don't have to do all of them. I have a TikTok, but I've never posted on TikTok because it scares the living crap out of me. But have that be part of your marketing, right? Open house, being able to say right out of the gate, this is our plan for the open house. We're gonna, have it the very first weekend that we go live, or I always do it kind of the second week to see how interest has been on the first, in case we have to drop the price or whatever it might be. Always have a plan of when you're gonna kind of do that open house, because right now you do want to do open houses. Like at first it was, we're just only gonna do an open house. We're gonna put it on the MLS on Thursday, no showing till the open house on Saturday. It'll be up under contract by Saturday night. ta-da, we're done. That's the only thing I'm gonna do is just that one open house. Now the open houses are like, people are doing it like every weekend until it gets on contract. And part of it's just exposure. Let's face it, the very first weekend, it's all the neighbors that come by. You know, second weekend, if you do it, you might be getting prospects because houses are taking longer to sell right now.
Question on that.
Yes.
Yes, based on your experience, there's like specific time, day that would work best. I mean,
It depends on the area.
Okay.
It depends on the area. One of the best places to actually find that information is on Wasatch Front Agents. And the only reason I say that is because every weekend lately, there's been people that post that say, how are open houses this weekend? And like one thing I noticed was like last weekend, the South Valley area was busier than anywhere else they posted. Harriman Road and things like that. Well, it's also the farthest away from all the marathons that were happening over the weekend. Right? So it's going to depend on the area, depending on
what
the
did you say,
weekend.
Wasatch?
Wasatch Front Agents on Facebook.
The Facebook group.
It's
So, but you can kind of start to see trends if you start looking at some of the comments. You can kind of start to see trends like times, because people will post, "Oh, I did it in this area at this time, had this many groups," and I've started to see like you can actually see trends of like Layton in those areas are really good traffic this time of day on like a Saturday. You know, where people will say, "Oh, I did it on Friday night," or whatever it is. Like you can really dial it in. So I can't tell you exactly what every like.
but it's part of the research.
Right, that's part of the
Makes
research. It's
sense.
a great resource for that, right? Websites. This doesn't mean necessarily your website, but just know where it's going to syndicate to, whether it's going to be your own website, realtor.com, Zillow.com, homes.com, KSL, Craigslist, any of those. Craigslist isn't around, so.
Everywhere but here.
Yeah.
I just
everywhere
think
here.
that's a creepy site anyway.
Ever since the whole Craigslist killer thing.
Come see.
Yeah. But just knowing like what website it's going to be on, and there's a lot of clients you're like, I want it on Zillow. Well, Zillow's a brokerage now, so it's going to automatically syndicate on there. Same thing with like if people are like, I want it on Homey, right? Things like that. Zillow, I think you have to go in and claim it though. I think it's weird the way they have it set
I
up.
don't know if you have to do that anymore because they are syndicating.
Yeah, they are syndicating the IDX, but there's
Because
still
the-
something weird where they don't always show up.
Yeah, the rules of IDX, like with the MLS, though, like it's gonna show who the
Right.
state brokerage is.
But anyways, know as part of your marketing plan what websites is going to show up. Again, even if you don't have your own website that you use, that doesn't matter. Just know where it's going to go because you want to be able to tell your client as part of your marketing plan, it's going to be in these places. This is where the general public is going to see it. They're going to see it, you know, as they're driving by. They're going to see these photos in these different areas. They're going to see the video these different places. They're going to be able to do the tour these different places. That's going to include these social media places, these websites. We're going to do an open house then. You're literally just telling them everywhere where you're marketing, right? So getting the home ready, the 3 Ds. Declutter, depersonalize, and deep clean. When I say deep clean, the yard is included. Like, I think it's so funny when I pull up to a house and like there's just weeds and the yard looks like crap. You walk in the house and you're like, this is amazing. But like your first impression was like, oh boy, you know, like that's just something for me. This is like yards are a big thing to me. So I love when I pull up to a house and it has like the best curb appeal. And you walk in and it just keeps going. I hate it when you walk up to a house and you're like, this has amazing curb appeal. You walk inside, you're like, oh boy. Right? But you can't always have good curb appeal. But those are the 3 things. Declutter. What does depersonalize mean? Pictures and knickknacks, and you know, we all go when we go on vacation, like we're buying like every one thing at every stop, and then we just have like this shelf and just throw it on the shelf, and it's like,
So you're telling me they're gonna take all the national park magnets off my fridge?
I mean, you can leave 1 or 2 just to show that you have a venture, but you know, you probably don't need all like 55 of them. You know, I mean, it's just stuff like that. Like you don't have to take all that stuff away because some of it does work really well for decor. But like if you're the guy that collects all your empties and sticks them up, you know,
Empties are always a no.
If you guys ever get the chance to go to Renee Curtis's house, you know, they've got this beautiful house down in River Bottoms, and they've got empty Gila bottles, but they're all the Clase Azules,
Hand painted.
hand painted. They're beautiful, and they had cabinets put in that specially display like the 4 or 5 they keep out, right? It looks beautiful. In that instance, it's okay, right? It's not all the empty Fireball bottles from the weekend before on top. Like when we say depersonalized, it falls really big into the declutter too.
I've
Right.
seen some where a lot of taxidermy, like if someone's like a big game hunter and it's all over the place. I've just been to a house like that and it was just like, oh, this is off-putting to me.
Yeah.
But
I had a client
yeah,
out in West Valley. They were a taxidermist.
like 1 or 2, but
And
this was
they-
like the whole.
Yeah, no, they ran a taxidermy place out of their 1,400 square foot tri-level in there. Like, yeah, this weird creepy room in the basement where you smell death.
Oh,
And everywhere you turned around, there was a skull, or there was, I mean, the guy had, I mean, their walls are just 8-foot walls, and you know, tri-levels, their ceilings are kind of all over the place anyways. He had this elk that he seriously had to mount like down here because the antlers were still almost touching the ceiling. It's like, yeah, that's, I know like those suck to store, like that's gotta go. And I told him like,
Sorry, an 8-foot.
no, 8-foot ceilings.
Okay, I was like, okay,
Because
okay,
the elk was so big and the way it was mounted, it was like taking up the whole wall. Like,
If I'm, so depersonalized, one of the, like we've all seen a model home, right? And so the idea of depersonalization is to basically take away what indicates who lives there.
Yep.
So you want the buyer to feel like it's a clean slate.
yeah, it's generic, the generic
Yeah,
family.
the generic family. You know, so your wall of family photos going back 30 years, it's time to pack those up, get ready for the next house and paint that wall. So it's gonna have all those squares on it from the photos being there for 20 years.
And we'll get into some ideas of that.
But yeah, so it's more, it is removing, it's shitty, it's like it's removing what makes the home feel like home to them. So it doesn't feel like somebody else's house in the buyer's home.
So a good way to describe that would be like, make your home look like a model.
Yeah.
Basically.
And honestly, like a lot of times when I have a client that's like listing and buying, it's a lot easier for them because a lot of times when that happens, they like immediately want to go see another house before they get listed theirs. And it's like this excited thing, right? And I'll usually like try to find like a really nice house to take them to that looks kind of like a model home. Because then I can reflect back and like, remember that house we went to? And I make sure it's not an actual model home because then it's easy for them to be like, well, yeah, that's a model home, right? But it's really nice to be able to reflect back and remember that house you went to, how it looked.
Yeah,
That's what we want yours to look like.
yeah.
You know, you can't always do that, but if you're able to do that, it's awesome because it really does help. So I would just say less is more. You know, and we'll get into some ideas on how to kind of coach them do that. Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Yes, that skull was left over from the taxidermy house. That was one of the things they left in the brooms.
They
Broom
left that.
cleanup. Broom cleanup. I forget skulls. The 2 guys that bought it were not a big fan of dead things when they walked in and saw it. Oh, I mean, it's a tiny skull, right? But when they saw that, they called me like, "No, did you bring me this?" So I got it. It's sat on my desk ever since. So during the marketing, during the sit down, right, we're talking about your value and what the house is worth, right? Discuss the pricing strategy. What does this mean? Well, you want to kind of encompass everything possible, right? There can be a lot. Things like buyer incentives right now. Are you going to offer closing costs? Are you going to offer rate buy downs? Are you going to offer a free cruise? Are you going to anything, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do it out the gate, right? Maybe part of the buyer incentive is your plan right out of the gate. You know, you can offer X amount of allowance in carpet or repairs or whatever it might be. Maybe that's something you offer right out of the gate. But if it's not, have in your back pocket, hey, houses are taking a little bit longer to sell. If we're on the market for 3 weeks and we don't get anything, is this something you're willing to do? Right? Have the discussion up front, because if you have it up front, it's a lot easier later on when you actually have to implement it if you're not implementing it. Okay. Price reduction scale, same thing, especially if they're so adamant about what their house is actually worth. And they're like, well, I think we should list it at this. And you're like, I think we should list it at this. If you haven't been there yet, you will one day. And you're gonna have the one client, but no matter what you try to talk sense into them, you should honestly probably just walk away, but you don't because you really want the listing. And so you just give it, right? One of the best ways to give in that case is be like, okay, well, you had your way, but only if in a week if it doesn't sell or you don't get X amount of action, we go my way, reduce the price of this, right? And even if that's not the scenario, what if you're the one told, hey, we're gonna list your house at 450, and then 3 weeks down the road, you haven't had any offers, right? If you prepare them out of the gate, you know, hey, every 3 weeks, we're gonna drop the price $5,000 until we hit that spot where we need to be. This is why we do that, because the longer the house sits, the more stigmatized it may be because it's been on the market long. You know, maybe people think that there's something wrong with it, right? Something. Even when the houses, I don't know how many houses I've snagged up for a client where it's like, this has been on the market for 60 days. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, but a lot of times because it came out high and then everybody else kind of got pushed away from it. And so it's like, yeah, we can snag this, right? So always have like your price reduction schedule, kind of something you talk to as part of your marketing plan, because that's not a fun conversation down the road. But if they already know that that's part of the plan, they're looking at you as your professional because you've already thought about all this. It's not like, oh, last minute crowd. It's not selling. You're only offering a price, or you're only suggesting a price reduction right now because I came to you with concern that it didn't sell as fast as you hoped it would, or that I hoped it would. And so your only resolution is to drop the price. What seller wants to hear that, right? So if you've already talked about it, it goes over a lot better. Worst case, best case scenario, we kind of talked about that, even just the pricing of it, right? Worst case, your house needs a lot of remodeling. It's going to be this. Best case, it's going to be this, right? Well, that's also like, okay, we get this offer, or we might only get this offer, right? And I actually like to take a net sheet and be like, if it sells for this, this is your net. If you get this, this is your net. And on the Facebook group, as well as on the drive, we have one that has like 10 different scenarios you can do. So if you have like 10 different offers, you could present all 10 offers and compare them. We can do the same thing with like, okay, well, if you got an offer that was this high, they had closing costs, or you can compare 10 different imaginary scenarios to present to them if that's what we want you to do, right? Or you could just do like 3 or 4, however many scenarios. The whole thing is best and worst case scenarios for pricing their home and actually getting offers on their home. Anything that you can prepare them for beforehand really, really helps. And the number one thing, be brutally honest. Sellers will push you around, right? The more honest you are up front, the more they're going to appreciate it and the more professionalism that you're going to show them. Discuss offer negotiation tactics. All the what ifs. This goes back into worst case scenarios. What if we get an offer that's $20,000 low? Well, this is how we approach an offer that's $20,000 low. What if we get a bad inspection report back? Well, this is how we dispute repairs, maintenance versus safety issues, or, what if they cancel after 3 weeks? Well, then we go back on the market. What if we get 20 offers? Well, we narrow those down to the best. Just be prepared for their what ifs, right? You've already thought about these scenarios. We can explain some of those scenarios to them and just say, this is how I handle these scenarios, right? Multiple offer strategy, like I said, that falls into your what ifs. Are you the type of agent that goes out and sends out the email or text that says, okay, we've received multiple offers. Everybody have your highest and best in by this date and time. Well, that's one way to do it, right? You could also do that the correct way and send out the multiple offer addendum, or you might choose to counter every single one of the offers, which I know a lot of agents don't like to do. You can counter every single one of the offers with a multiple offer counter. And then they all come back at different rates, then you get to cherry pick which ones rather than just having to throw their highest and best in the wind and be like, oh, I get it, right? You can be like, well, I like your offer, but if you change this, we might accept it. Do that to every single one of them. And then maybe 3 of them drop out, 2 of them stay in. Well, I still like this, but maybe you need to increase this. You can literally do that forever until you get exactly what you want out of it. Just be like, highest and best. Let's see what you got, right? So know what your multiple offer strategy is going to be. Most people don't use that latter one. They just go with the highest and best, which blows me away. Timelines, what their timelines need to be. Also, how to talk to them about timelines for maybe they're buying and selling at the same time. Or maybe there's a certain amount of time where they know they're going to have to do the lease back or whatever it might be, right? Disclosure, things that they need to disclose. We just had an agent yesterday text me. He's like, hey, so if a house's foundation is like cracked and sinking and the house has like major structural damage and we are the buyers, we find that in the inspection, and we send that inspection report over to the sellers to make them aware and we cancel, and they go under contract with somebody new, do they have to disclose that? Absolutely. Will they? Probably not, right? It's
Well, if they're your clients, they will.
yeah, they're your clients, but there's a lot of
It's not a request.
there's a lot of agents out there that they think because it happened during the inspection, it wasn't something that happened, beforehand. Meth is the same way where they're like, well, it happened during inspection. It wasn't high enough to, meth is different because if it's not high enough for disclosure, you don't have to disclose it. So let's say it's barely, it doesn't get flagged by the EPA somehow, and you don't disclose whatever. But things like that, you need to discuss disclosure with your clients, the things that they need to disclose. If during the process, the buyer cancels, but they handed you their entire inspection report and you know every single little thing about the house that's wrong now, guess what? You do have to disclose. The easiest way to disclose that rather than going and doing an entire updated form on the disclosure meeting, listing every little thing in the update section is you can just say, see attached inspection. And give that inspection because you now have a copy of it, so you now own. So just make sure that they know what things are going to be disclosed, right? Again, these are all things, you're just kind of preloading them with information. And this is all just looking like you actually know what you're talking about. You know how to handle every single one of these things that might come up during the listing process or during the selling and buying process, right? These are kind of optional services that are out there. You can do things like a listing warranty. There's some warranty companies that do offer a listing warranty. The listing warranty covers things like, hey, it's listed, and all of a sudden the air conditioning goes out while it's listed. Now your seller's like, how are we supposed to sell this house that doesn't have AC? I can't afford to get this fixed right now. Well, guess what? You have a listing warranty and you pay the deductible and they come out and they fix it. Or whatever.
Like the same, are they usually like 500?
Free.
Usually 3.
Free?
Yeah.
Like people commit to buying one for the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times a lot of the companies now that do it, it's if you commit. There are companies, I think Claim still offers one that's free. Elevate, I think you have to say, we'll include a home warranty with it, but they are available. So staging, that's another thing that's obviously you can do for your clients. Again, these are just optional services that maybe you include in your marketing strategy, or maybe you include them with like a certain level price point of a house, or it's just you have a little bit of fluff in your budget for certain things when houses need them, right? A handyman, yeah.
Do you do staging for homes that are occupied, or is that only for
It depends.
they can?
It depends.
Common?
It actually is common for houses that are occupied. A lot of people, like, maybe they just have collected furniture through the years and the house just isn't great looking. I've seen a lot of agents that know enough about staging where they'll go in, they'll kind of like maybe remove some of the unnecessary, like the houses we walk into and they have like the old, like, movie rack that has all their old VHS and DVDs on it. And they like, it's on, you know what kind of stand it's on, guys. It's on like the black wobbly, it's like, hey, we're gonna just take this out and just not have that there. Everything else looks good. Maybe we're gonna, throw a couple pillows here, move this here. like there's different types of staging, right? There's kind of like you're walking into a space and just kind of rearranging it, maybe adding or eliminating to make the space more feng shui. Or there's the, we need to actually like get rid of your furniture, remove furniture, or vacant space, you know? And then there's, with vacant space, you have virtual staging. That's also awesome. So depending on the company we use. Yeah, so the staging. And usually you're not staging, you don't necessarily have to stage the whole house. Sometimes it's just kind of like the main areas, especially if you have like an awkward space. You stage like that kind of awkward space. Dining rooms are like one of the biggest things that get staged because, especially with like tri-levels where they have like a little on-code dining, you walk in there and you're like,
No way.
I don't know if that table would fit right there, you know?
Right.
And so stagers will say, oh, we can definitely fit this kind of table in there. And it allows the buyer to go in and be like, our table's just like that. It would actually fit there great. Or we would have to get a table like that. So I know like in my little condo, they didn't have a dining room table in there. So I was like, and the light is like not set. This light is centered on the window that's across the room and not like in the space. And so you're like, I don't know how a table. So I ended up getting a table, and guess what? In order to have it like centered underneath the light, the person at that end can't pull their chair out to sit down. It's, I didn't know what to put there, right? Had I seen something there before, I might have had a better idea. But that's kind of one of the reasons you stage anyways, just for awkward spaces too. Handyman services, maybe you say, hey, you know, as you're walking through the house, you're starting to see like little paint patches or holes or whatever it might be, or you see some, you're like, oh, you know, I know this house might go FHA, but there's peeling paint. I'm going to offer X amount of money for every home to have a handyman come in. Maybe you've already got a handyman you've worked with, and you know that he can do X amount of hours of work for $500, right? So you just say, hey, with every house I list, I'm going to give you 5 hours worth of handyman, right? Pre-list inspections, same thing. You have an inspector that comes in, does an inspection, and there's a couple ways you can handle that too. They can just be doing an inspection so your sellers know, especially if there's worry there. There's clients that like, they're so worried about how their house is going to be presented to the general public that they want to fix every single little thing in their house before they list it. And those are great for those people, because otherwise they're going to try to do it all themselves, and then they just keep dragging their feet because they keep finding this next thing. And so you can offer things like pre-list inspections where you can find out about all that stuff. That also allows you to have an inspection that you can actually go to the buyer, like, hey, just so you know, we had this inspection done prior. If you like, I can give it to you, and then you can decide whether or not you still need to get an inspection. So just another thing that we kind of offer. Same thing with pre-list appraisals. If you have a house where you're just like, I can't figure this out, you know, or the buyers or the sellers finding you on die, you can be, let's just pay the couple $100. Have an appraiser come in, tell us what it's worth. Then you can use that in your listing. House just appraised for X amount, that's how much we're asking for. Right? Like there's different ways you can use that. But especially homes where there's no comps, custom homes. I mean, like most $1 million homes are like custom homes, but that really, the pre-list appraisals really help with stuff like that. So you're you versus them. All right, so you versus them. Do you know what sets you apart from the competition? Like have you seen what other agents do? Now there's no competition in this room, right? But like a non-union agent, what is it that they do? Why is it that they get listings and we don't? I know you guys don't get listings, but everybody else in the community apparently does because they're not here. You guys apparently need to get some listings. So the you versus them, this is your value proposition, right? The reason we're going through all this marketing stuff is because like, as you guys build your plan of what you're going to do every time you present a listing and every time you have a listing, you build your marketing plan. This is your value proposition, especially when we're fighting against commissions, right? When people are saying, well, you're not worth 3%. You're like, well, literally, I'm spending 1% of that just to market your home, let alone the time. If I'm charging you $22 an hour and it takes 30 days to sell and I'm giving you X amount of hours, I can literally show you that I am exactly worth X percent, 3%, 2%, 7%, whatever it might be, right? So this is your value proposition. And this is why you charge what you charge, right? You can show your stats. Hey, other listings I've done, this is my average days on market for a house like yours, right? You don't want to show them like, if it's a house out in like Hoffman Heights and Kearns, it's listed for 400,000. You don't want to show them all your $1 million listings. And you're like, yeah, I can sell $1 million listing in 2 months. Well, how is that compared to the 400,000 in Hoffman Heights, right? So you can show them days on market for your previous listings. If you don't have previous listings, that's okay. You don't have to do that, right? And you can still bring up stats even from the brokers that shows, you know, what houses are selling, and other agents can help you get some of that information. You can look it up on that office. Your list price on previous listings versus sold price. This is going to tell them how well you are, or how good you are at pricing a home, right?
Can we use other Unity listings? No, I don't use mine.
Yeah, because here's the great thing about Unity is when you're pricing a home, I mean, you see it all the time in the group, right? Hey, I need help pricing this home. Who can help me out? It's not like you're going at it alone. We are a team here, right? Make sure you get their permission to say, hey, I want to use some of your stats. Is that okay? Right? But we're still a team. And if we can provide you with any of that stats to help you get the listing, I don't think there's an agent here that's going to be like, no. And if they are, that's fine. They can do that way. But we really hope that we have built that workplace. How often do you include contingencies? Things like closing costs or rate buy downs like listing agent? How many times do you have to opt for something like that in order to get the house sold? Right? These are just your stats, and maybe every time you do it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? But if you can show them any of this information, it helps. Client reviews. As long as they don't know your mom's first name, you can show them mom's review, right? It don't matter. Still a review. Mom's never gonna, well, my mom had a bad review, but like, hopefully yours don't.
I bet your mom, she
I don't
doesn't.
have a mom.
Your dad, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your cat. You know? Like just any sort of review that you can show that maybe you are brand new at this and you don't have things, right? Well, you still want character review. Like, cause that's any of this kind of still leads up to, are you an honest person that can actually do what I need you to do and I can trust you? Well, I don't need to have ever sold a house to know that if somebody can be like, yes, everything that they've ever said they do. They are a great human. They stand by their word and they will work hard no matter what it is. Even if they don't know, they're going to learn.
So question, maybe this is stupid, but how would you go about, so for example, I have my first listing now and I had a couple offers come in today, right?
Mhm.
So I'm hoping I'm doing the best job that I can and my clients are happy. How do I, when we're done and everything and they're happy, where do I go say, hey, do a review? Like, would they just do it on my Facebook? Or
You could have, there's a couple different ways, right? If you have a Facebook business page, you can say, hey, can you leave me a review there, right? If you have a Google business page, you can have them do it there. You can create through like Google Forms. You can just go to forms.google.com and be like, how did I, on a rating of 1 to 5, how would you rate my service? And can you give me any expansion on why you rated me that way? Right? I did that.
You can create your own form.
Yeah, so I did that and I just put it out on Facebook and I got like 30 different responses. And the nice part about that is, and you can put in there saying, hey, this is going to be used for my website and share different places. Are you okay with that? They can put yes or no. It'll break it into a spreadsheet where you'll be able to see every single review, whether or not they're okay with you sharing it or not. But then I basically took those and I'm like, okay, well now I have these reviews. I can make like little things in Canva that show the review person's name and share it. Or I can go and put it on my website because the websites have a place where you can put client reviews that they haven't actually gone in and made. You can actually like go in and make them as well. Right? Like there's just different things you can do. I like the Google Forms way. The downside is you still want them, if you have like a Google page or an actual business page, you want them to go there and do it.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know that, but okay, that's what I wanted.
But if you don't send out a form, have those, because that's still, if you can't bring up your Google page or something like that and show the client, being able to show them something still is going to help. It does help when it's from somewhere that they can just go search,
It is fast.
right? But especially when-
Google Business option, it's really easy to set up.
Yeah.
And it will increase your SEO if people type your name into Google. The more reviews you have that way, the more prevalent you'll be.
You'll know.
Yeah, and it's nice too, because
And it's more credible
How
that
do you
way.
get people to leave several different reviews?
You
Like
don't.
Google
You
form
don't.
and
You
Facebook
don't.
and it's like,
you don't, and that's why,
Take whatever you can get.
yeah, and that's why you kind of take whatever you can get.
okay.
Over time, you might be able to get certain clients to be like, hey,
What if
Yeah.
I'll, give you a gift card.
You can.
Reviews
Yeah.
in several different places?
you
That's
absolutely can.
cool. Okay.
Yeah, you absolutely can, because that's not for the trade of lead or anything like that.
Right.
You just ask them to leave your review. So yeah, you can work with that. But like Heather was saying about the Google review, it's super easy to set up, right? They send us a postcard. So if you're having this be your address, they send us a postcard. We give you the confirmation number, you put it in, it's done. It's all like a couple day process to get the whole thing set up. What's cool, because they ask you for your phone number and they ask you for if you have a website, an email address, anything like that. Anytime that something connects to you via one of those things, like if somebody goes in and searches your phone number, because it's on your Google page, it brings that up. So if somebody searches your website,
Yeah.
like and accidentally does it in the search bar rather than like the actual like domain field, your Google page comes up. And so they're constantly seeing those reviews. So I love Google Business Page for that. The downside of Google page is you're at Costco and you cut off some lady in the parking lot and she sees the phone number on your car and she goes and gives you a Google review and you're like, I've never even done business with you. Like this was a Costco instance. Why did you take this to my Google page? Pretty hard to get removed.
Sounds like you know.
Yeah.
That would be-
Phone number on the car.
Yeah. Downside is you find yourself just being nicer.
Maybe I won't, because I
Nope.
can't like an
Nope.
apple.
Don't matter you that.
Yeah, don't fight with people. Don't get opinionated.
Oh,
The only reason our company has bad reviews.
okay, we're done. I get it.
We've had-
I want so.
We've had that deal with like somebody got into like an online altercation with like two different of our agents at certain points, and like they just went.
So
like they created accounts.
they literally went through and created multiple accounts, and finally,
Are you serious?
basically had to like, I don't want to say the word, but like we had to really schmooze the guy.
Oh yeah, no, I kissed his ass so hard. Anyhow, like you were.
He may have ended up with gift cards and all sorts of stuff to just like, and what he ended up doing was he went and deleted like 2 of the 6 fake accounts he did. He deleted those accounts in the reviews and then like gave 1 more star for the other ones. So our Google review on our page is still like 4, 4, 4, 5 or something like that, rather than 5, because he's the only person that didn't leave us 5, right? But it was like, well, that's still better than.
And
What
this
you guys
is why
got
I don't
before.
leave naughty
Yeah.
comments on my TikTok, because community is right at the top, so I'm like, naughty.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank
The question is, as a consumer, which platform do you trust for your reviews?
Yeah.
I don't Google all the
I
time.
wouldn't trust a Google Forms review personally because
Right.
somebody could doctor that and finish other
Right.
ones. That's why I use Google Business,
Yeah.
because whatever people put out there is exactly.
Yeah,
what
when you
Google
can go
uses.
see where somebody has actually done it, it's gonna be better. The Google form thing, the only reason I would say if you don't have a place like Google to do that is if you're trying to create something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still take your
Yeah, you can.
reviews from your
that's
Google
true.
page, right?
It's what
As long
makes
as
it
you have
constant.
permission. Yeah, as long as you have permission, you can still create like, hey, this is my Google review on my Google page. I'm gonna take this and just create a post with that. Are you okay with that? Right? It's the same
They
thing.
posted it as a public thing on the internet. I don't know that you really need their permission.
Oh, that's true.
Well, yeah.
It's
I mean,
nice
that's
to
probably
ask.
nice to ask.
Like,
Yeah.
that's something it's courtesy, not
They put it out
But-
as public information already.
either way, like back to like just you're trying to gather the information.
Yeah, if you're trying to gather information, you don't have Google stuff set up.
Yeah.
You can, like I said, I did the Google Forms thing. And I actually had more people that did that because I was able to post on Facebook than they actually went to my Google page and did the review. And it was really cool because then it was also really easy for me to just like copy and paste it into my website. Because either way, like you still have to like take them somewhere, put them somewhere. The Google page still, like Heather said, is probably one of the best places to actually get them to go leave the review. It's gonna be one of the most credible
Mhm.
and most useful as far as being seen. So, because if anybody isn't using Google for search, people actually use Safari.
Right.
Bing, man.
Bing.
It's all about Bing.
Yeah.
What? Why are you laughing?
DuckDuckGo.
I need to program my VCR. Someone help me.
Put your money where your mouth is.
VCR, really?
Put your money where your mouth is. Offer a guarantee. Now this is hard. That doesn't mean like back in like the early 2000s, it was huge. Like if we can't sell your house, we'll buy it. Ask those guys how that turned out.
One or two. One, they actually made good on it and bought a bunch of houses they couldn't afford. Two, they're like, oh, here's this loophole that makes it not buy your house.
Exactly.
And that doesn't actually build credibility. You can offer a guarantee, you offer something that you can handle.
Yeah, it may just be like, hey, if I can't sell your house in the first 60 days because on the price I did, or like within this range, don't ever say like I'm gonna sell for the price I gave you. Always do like a range, right? Then I'll knock X amount off my commission, or I will give you this at closing.
A foot rub.
Foot rub, or whatever it might be, right?
No, actually,
I don't think so.
So-
Actually, that'll motivate you to sell it tomorrow.
So the offer
That's what I'm saying.
The offer guarantee can be money, it can be non-monetary, it can literally be anything, right? Leaving them something tangible, and this is why I gave that book as a cramp, we put that in there.
Yes.
Leave them with something tangible. This one's my favorite, guys.
Bins.
Moving this, you guys all said that exact same way, right? You show up to a listing appointment, you stop at Walmart on the way there, and they have the multicolored bins, depending on which Walmart you go to, they're teal or gray or white or pink or whatever, right? Gray is always a good option, gray or black. But you pick up 5 of them, they're $5 each, they come with a lid, and they're decent, right? You pick up 5 of those, and you pick up a roll of boxing tape, and you make sure you have at least however many bins you have business cards, maybe 1 or 2 extra they actually give them. But before you get to the house, you take your business card and you take it to the very bottom of the bin or underneath of the lid of the bin. And you go to the listing appointment, and even if you don't get the listing, you just told them how they need to be personalized, how they need to take down all the pictures and things like that, or how, hey, you just need to declutter, and they're like, well, where do I put all this stuff? And you just gave them nice bins, not boxes, cardboard boxes they're going to shove in a closet, right? Nice bins that they can stack even just in a corner somewhere in a closet, in a garage, out on a patio, because they're pretty waterproof. I maybe just would recommend that one. But you gave them nice bins. And what's great about that is even if they don't list with you, how long do you think they're going to keep that bin?
Probably a bit.
How many of them do you think are going to take the time to rip off your business card, especially if it's underneath or inside?
Underneath the bin.
Or like underneath the
When
lid?
you open it up and there's your card.
No, like either inside on the bottom
Uh-huh.
or underneath the lid. And the reason I say those places is because they're not going to rip it off. Most people are not going to rip it off. They're not going to take the time because it's either now covered or they just don't even see it like every time they open it, right? They want to see it when they take the lid off and they said to someone, they're like, oh yeah. Same thing when they pull all the stuff out and they're like, oh yeah. Right? It's a great thing that you can do, but you're leaving on something. First of all, nobody out there is doing that. Right? I've still yet to hear very many people that actually take moving bins idea and actually do it. I've told everybody this over the last few years, and I still just don't know anybody that actually does it, right? Keith has done it.
Have you gotten anything out of it?
Yeah, I mean, the listing has already been to get.
Yeah.
There's
The
nothing-
whole idea.
We'll say, yeah, I got a couple.
Well, no, but like, again, because I've been doing this for a really long time, right? I've got the trust with the people who talk to me is kind of built in.
Mhm.
But even with that, if you're walking in like really confident you're gonna get the listing, this is still an important thing to do. Like the value adds that you bring to it, you want to always bring them to it. So if you're going to do this, you do this with everyone, even if it's your sister or your mom.
Yeah.
Show up and be like, hey, this is something I do.
And it's such a cheap thing to do too. I mean, you're literally
$30
$5.
It's helping them to do depersonalized.
You're
Now
helping
you're
them.
giving them this avenue. to
Yeah.
do it.
That's
And
personalized.
what's
with your
great?
card.
What's great is if they're,
Yeah.
if they're interviewing 2 or 3 agents, then every single agent kind of does the beginning of this whole thing where they know their stuff. You know, you guys are all pricing about the same. And what things are gonna stand out, right? Well, if anything, this might always help you stand out. Right? If there's nothing else, this one little thing might be the thing that helps you stand out. Maybe it doesn't make you stand out enough, right? But then when they do have a bad experience through the process and they get through it though, and then all of a sudden they're moving and they're like, oh yeah. Maybe next time. Maybe next time, right? But
What
it's
do you do
just,
with the movie tickets during open house? What, to each person that comes to the open
no,
house?
no, no, we'll get to
Oh,
that.
okay, sorry. I'm like,
It's just, it's thinking of something tangible, right? So you do things like $20 with $30 with moving beds. Bring house cleaning. Hey, if you want, I can have a house cleaner come in here for 3 hours. They're usually like $50 an hour, something like that. So $150. And we have somebody come in here and get all the blinds. Like, if you don't mind doing all this other stuff, like I'll have somebody come in and do the baseboards, blinds, and vents. Those 3 areas can make or break a house. I don't know how many of you like go walk around like I do. Look at those things, but like, yeah, like light fixtures, blinds, any ledge, right? It does make or break a house. And so offering them, hey, I'm gonna give you, whether they list with you or not, you can just be like, hey, I'm gonna leave you with this, right? Hopefully that's more or less something that you know, like, hey, if you list with me, like, I'm gonna offer you this. This is just part of my package, right? Movie tickets during an open house. That's just something that's saying, hey, so our open house is gonna be the very first weekend we list. Do you have any plans during that time? No, we'll probably just take the dog for a walk. Well, why don't you take the dog?
wild. Okay. To get them out of the house.
Okay.
Okay.
Take the dog to a movie, sneak him in. It's just to get them out of the house. Maybe it's not movie tickets, maybe it's something else. You know, oh, I just tried this place not too far from you. It's great for a mimosa or whatever it might be. But here, this is on me, it's a gift card there for. And now this is something, it's just something tangible, something you can leave with them. You're not gonna like hand every single person like, hey, here's a gift card to T27. They're like, hey, there's not a T27 within 40 minutes of me, but hey, thanks. We'll still go take the dog for a walk during the open house, right? Like, be able to flex on that and just say, hey, with every open house I do, I'm gonna make sure you guys are taken care of and not just going for a walk for the day. Because I don't know how many open house I've done with the clients. Just like, hey, I'll just take the dog for a walk. And then it's like every hour or so they're like, or every 20 minutes, so they're walking past the front of the house to see who's in there. You know, it's like you can just go. Have weird clients, man. Etc. It's just I should take that out, but it's in there. But just anything tangible like that you can think of, right? There's no wrong thing. You can leave them with gifts, you can leave them with vacations, you can leave them with anything as long as they're actually using you for services. Yeah. Know your shit, guys. Now this is not, you've gone through the entire thing and now you need to know your shit. We're ending with this one because this is one of the most important things with the entire listing presentation. Knowing your shit, right? So you need to know your shit before you even show up. They say knowledge is power. I say bullshit. If you don't apply what you know, there is no power there. Applied knowledge is power. So research every home in the neighborhood sold, not just the homes. This is why I was saying do the live CMA, right? You know everything that's sold in the neighborhood. Now, do you have to do is extensive research on every single home? No, you want to do more extensive research on the ones that you're going to use as comps, but know what is sold in the neighborhood. Know what the houses are selling for per square foot. Know what the highest sold house is and the lowest sold house and everything in between. Know that neighborhood. Know what has sold, what has been listed, what has expired, what has been taken off market. Know every single status on the MLS that has happened in that neighborhood. Even if you have to write it all down, put it in a notebook somewhere, know it, right? This is not something that most agents do as they're getting ready to list a house. They might know what's active and what's not active. They might know what's sold and what's not sold. They don't know what's expired. They don't know what has gone inactive. They don't know any of that because none of that tends to matter when you're doing a CMA, right? Well, why did these 3 houses in this neighborhood expire? Well, maybe they were all overpriced. Or maybe there was a fire in the neighborhood that actually encapsulated a bunch of the homes and yours was in the middle of it. You didn't even know it because nobody disclosed it to you. You just never know, right? But know your stuff. Research the schools. Know what private schools, charter schools, public schools, whether it's elementary, junior high, kindergartens, any type of school you can think of, especially if your clients have kids that are going into, maybe their first year of junior high or their first year of elementary or whatever it might be. Like, know what schools are available, know whether or not they're good, be able to give your clients maybe a resource to see how the schools are grading, things like that, right? Nearby venues, parks, restaurants, etc. Know the neighborhood, right? Like, what's the closest grocery store? Maybe they're like me and like absolutely despise Walmart, right? Like, I am the luckiest person in the world, guys, because I've gotten new debit cards, credit cards, everything, and not a single one of them works at Walmart. I can't figure out why. Like, I go and I use the little chip thing, and they just don't work. It's amazing. But
You mean to say you hate it and you still go shop there?
no, I hate there, but like I've had to go there a few times, and
Because
I
it's
yeah.
For the bins.
For the bins. But I've gone there a few times and I'm like, I can't even check out. Like, I got a brand new card, it doesn't even work. So, but know things like that. Know everything that's available in that area, right? And then know your competition. As you're going through another neighborhood and you see other signs, or as you're doing your comps, you see who is sold in that neighborhood. How many homes do they list? Are they farming that area? If you go and look them up and they're like, oh, they've sold 6 houses in this neighborhood. They're obviously farming this neighborhood because they've sold 6 houses in the last like 2 months. Well, guess who was probably going to be there before you were active? That agent.
Hopefully after you.
Right. So know who's in that area. Know their days on market. Know things like their list price versus sales price. All the same stats that you're going to want to present them for you. Even if you don't have those stats, if you know their stats, it's going to help you. Their marketing strategy. Well, go on their Facebook. Are they just throwing this on Facebook? Or are they just an MLS border that throws it on the MLS? Are they super popular on TikTok? How is it that they're doing these
So they
things?
have an OnlyFans page?
Yeah, are they talking houses through OnlyFans? How are they doing this, right? Either way, know the
Keith is like,
competition.
wow.
I read listing descriptions and that.
Either way, know the competition, know their stats. Okay. And then, well, the second most important thing. Now, again, that was know your shit should have been very first, right? We left it last because it was one of the most important things we didn't want you guys to forget that part, right? But the very, very last thing that you should do before you leave, after you've gone through your whole marketing plan and everything, you ask for it. And you don't just ask for it, you don't just say, so can I list your house? Ask when. When are we going to list it? Don't ask a yes or no question, right? Ask something open-ended that actually calls for an answer, calls for them to actually like give something back to you besides a yes or a no. I ask something open-ended. When are you going to list your home? So when do you want to go live? When can I send the photographer in? When can I, not can I, yes or no, right? Things like when, where, how. So pre-meeting, you guys all remember the pre-meeting, what we do during that? Do a little stalking, practice your CMA on their house, get the numbers and stuff in your head ready. Go to the meeting, you go over your entire marketing plan, your pricing strategy, your objectives, things like that. You versus them, what it is that you actually bring to the table, that being your actual marketing plan. Right? Your marketing plan, your stats, your knowledge, which brings you to the last thing, actually knowing your shit, knowing who the competition is, right? Knowing that bins at Walmart are only $5 and nobody else brought those. And so the last guy who is marketing this neighborhood that you were going to meet with after me, he didn't leave you moving bins, so that's why he picked me, right? Any other questions? Clear as mud? Because we all know Keith doesn't remember it. He wrote this, so
Oh, no,
he made the slides. He made a lot of the slides, I put in a bunch of slides.
This was a full team effort, this one. But yeah, the generic slides are all me and my.
Because we, oh no, I don't know anything. That was Keith that wrote it, so I wanted to make
That's
sure.
the last slide in the future.
Can I ask just real quick about
Yes.
the Google business page? I've
Yeah.
set them up before for other entities, but yeah, you do get the postcard or the phone call that
Ah.
comes here. And then I would just use the website that I have through Playster.
Playster. Mhm.
So that would, okay, so I just do it that
Yeah.
way, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, when you set that up, you can just call us like, hey, watch
Yeah.
my postcard.
Real quick, I'm gonna stop the recording, but just say I'm stopping the recording before I stop the recording. So.
Yeah, so you can just call us. Every week we get a bunch of those postcards from the
Oh,
same time. So we're very used to like watching for them and as soon as they come, like knowing that it's time sensitive to give you the code on them and so.
Okay, awesome.